Whenever I was on the highway patrol, I remember a particular attorney that we would meet in the courtroom. He would usually defend someone that was charged with driving under the influence. He had an interesting way that he did that. On a first offense, driving under the influence, he would tell his client, "Do not pay me in advance. I want you to bring cash money with you on the day of trial." And the attorney had told me one time he liked to be able to feel the money in his pocket whenever he was up giving his closing argument, so he wouldn't run out of steam, that he could be encouraged while he was defending a guilty man. But anyway, this particular day I had to charge someone with driving under the influence, and I was sitting in the courtroom ready for the trial to start. And just as the judge was getting ready to start the trial, the defense attorney stood up and he said, "Your Honor, I'd like to tell you something if I could." He said, "My client is aware that he's supposed to bring cash money in order for me to defend him." He said, "He has chosen to show up in court today with no money. And so therefore, I would like to tell you that I will not be defending him." And the attorney just turned and walked out of the courtroom. It was an interesting look that that young gentleman had as he was sitting there at the defense table all by himself without an experienced attorney to defend him. Well, my name is Richard Coleman, and I'm the pastor at Shepherd Church of the Nazarene in Lexington, South Carolina, and it's great to be able to spend just a few moments with you today. We've been looking in the book of Judges, and when we're looking at Judges, we're seeing where the Israelites have fallen away from God, and other people have come into their country and they have stolen their animals, run down their crops. The Israelites are basically starving to death, and God has heard their cries, and he has gone to Gideon and told Gideon that he wants him to form an army and to save Israel from their enemies. And so Gideon rather, sends out the announcement that he needs fighting men. And 32,000 men show up. Well, if I can back up just a little bit in this story and to let you know in the chapters previous to chapter 7, that whenever God had appointed Gideon, was confident that God was with him and that God was going to help him. And so Gideon went out and he found an altar of Baal, and he destroyed that altar. Well, when the people the next day came and found out that the altar was destroyed, they said, "Who did this?" And someone said Gideon was the one that destroyed this altar of Baal. And they said, "Well, we're in big trouble then. Baal is going to come and cause all kind of problems for us. We need to kill Gideon." And Gideon's dad spoke up and he said, "Why would you want to do that?" He said, if Baal is such a powerful God, why don't we let Baal defend himself? So the people thought about that and they said, "Okay, we'll leave Gideon alone and we'll let Baal defend himself." I'm thinking that maybe that's part of the reason why God made the decision that he did whenever 32,000 men showed up to fight this battle with Gideon. And God basically said, if 32,000 go against even a larger army of the Amorites, those 32,000 people and the other people that are watching, they might say that it was because of the number of men that they conquered this other army, or maybe it's because they were such great fighting men. They might swell up with pride. God said, I want it to be very clear in everyone's mind that I did it, that God was the one that rescued the Israelites. So God told Gideon, he said, "Go to those 32,000 men and tell them that any of them that are afraid, they can go home." So Gideon made that announcement, and 22,000 of them went home. So now Gideon only has 10,000 to go up against this great army. Then God tells him, he said, you still have too many. I'm with you. I'm the one that's going to do all the work. He said, here's what you'll do. Whenever you come to the first stream and these guys want to take a break, he said, the ones that dip their hands into the water and bring the water up to their mouths like they're forming a cup with their hands and drink it that way, those are the ones that you take into battle with you. The ones that get on their hands and knees and lap the water up directly out of the stream, you tell them to go home. And so there were 9,700 men that got down on their hands and knees and drank the water directly from the stream. So it was only 300 that dipped the water up into their hands and drank it that way. And so Gideon sent the 9,700 home. Now, one thing I noticed and really hadn't paid much attention to before in this story is that before that 9,700 men went home, Gideon took their provisions. Now, I don't know if that means just their food or just their canteens. It probably means a lot of other things too, weapons. I'm not sure what all it was. But Gideon followed God's direction, but he also used his common sense and said, we might be able to bring some of the things that you brought along with you. It's probably a message somewhere in there that as we follow God's directions, that it's good for us to be able to use the good common sense that God has given us as we go along. So now we think about the fact that Gideon is now going to face a large army of people with only 300. We don't have to fight all of our battles by ourselves. That was the point that God was trying to make. They'd already determined that if Baal was so powerful, let him defend himself. And God realized, well, I want these people to understand that I'm great enough that I can handle whatever comes along. God had the opportunity to use 32,000 people to fight this battle, but he chose to do it with only 300. God does not need us to defend him. God can take care of himself. What God wants from us is to be a participant, not to be the one that wins the battle, not the one that necessarily does all the heavy lifting. God wants us to have faith and put our trust in him and let him pull the heavy load. Gideon was in the process of finding this out. I can only imagine when Gideon had 32,000 men there, he probably started feeling a little more confident, but now he's down to 300, but he's still putting his faith and his trust in God. And that's what God wants from me, and that's what God wants from you. I don't know what's going on in your life. I don't know what type of battles that you're facing. I don't know what your adversaries might look like. I don't know what type of mountains you might need to climb or try to go through. I don't know those things, but you do. And there are times in our life where we're thinking that, and we might even be praying for God to give us the added strength or courage or whatever to be able to defeat this enemy and make these tremendous things happen, when in reality what God wants to do is to let him do the heavy lifting and just be able to put our faith and our trust in him and say, God, I can't handle all of this. I'm just going to have to turn it over to you. I like that song that says, God, if you choose not to calm the storm, then just calm me. God can take care of himself, and he can take care of us if we just put our trust and our confidence in him. Well, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you. May you truly be able to put your confidence and faith in God this week. Thanks for taking the time and watching today.